Welcome to the final lecture recording for HEA 10002. It's week 11 and we made it. The purpose of this video is to guide you through a close reading of the content on technology and health. This content speaks directly to the week 11 lecture PowerPoint. Feel free to have this to hand for taking notes throughout. As always, let's begin with a definition. There is no definitive definition when it comes to technology, though two are offered on screen. Technology could perhaps be defined as the use of science to invent useful things to solve problems. When it comes to medical technology, there are several hopes or purposes to this tech. One, that it allows for improved diagnosis and treatment. Two, that it is somehow linked to improved quality of life. 3, that it improves our knowledge, or 4, that it improves the efficiency of the health system. The advancement of technology requires innovation, thinking up new and different ways to acquire knowledge or improve healthcare experiences and quality of life. We're going to look at some advancements from the 4 areas listed on screen. Let's begin with a discussion of biotechnology. Firstly, biotechnology. What is it? Well, it's the manipulation of living things in order to develop products, systems, or environments that benefit people, animals, or plants, any organism, basically. Farmers have been manipulating living things for a really long time, selectively breeding crops and crossbreeding them to improve the strength and sustainability of their produce. Selective breeding is another practice with long-standing precedents. We see selective breeding of plants and animals among the records of the early pioneers, the goal of which was to enhance the desirable traits within the environment. We see this fairly often today, or at least I do, living so close to a dog park. When we look at the wide array of dog varieties, this is an example of selective breeding. Gregor Mendel is a key figure in discussions of biotechnology and selective breeding. His identification of genes was really central to the subsequent advancements in biotechnology. So what's happening now in the field of biotechnology? We've been focusing so far on historic moments, but what are some current practices or advancements? Well, we have developed fairly advanced ways to test genetics. We can identify vulnerabilities to inherited diseases in a way that we couldn't do 20 years ago or 50 years ago. Moreover, we can provide a more detailed analysis of how, specifically, certain drugs or pharmacological agents will map or interact with a person's genetic makeup. So the goal of this kind of research is to tailor and optimize drug treatment therapies. Stem cell research is another branch of biotechnology that is still in its infancy, though the hope is that scientists can use stem cells, cells that are not differentiated, to replace cells that are lost or damaged from disease or injury. As always, when we start talking about modifying organisms, specifically humans, it can lead to fairly heated discussions that have moralistic and ethical undertones. Technologies that involve organ transplants, human embryos, specifically those harvested from unused fertilized eggs, can be particularly offensive to some people. And what this slide is getting you to consider is how new technologies, so when it's something unknown, can stir particular concerns. Let's shift our focus now to pharmaceuticals. Modern practices of creating pharmaceutics rely heavily on biotechnology. As mentioned before, there is a developing field of research that looks at how specifically certain drugs will affect individuals. So the goal of this kind of new technology around pharmaceuticals is to create a kind of personalized medicine. Another area of contemporary research relates to the question of how we might make use of biological sources to create treatments. An example listed on this slide is how an insulin medication was derived from a human insulin gene, which ultimately led to the production of vast quantities of synthetic human insulin at low cost. What other technologies can we consider? Well, the electronic health record is a really critical one. Why is it critical? Well, because in the health system, access to timely and accurate information or crosstalk between specialists and treating staff is critical. Historically, we have tended to favour silos, keeping information in disparate systems. But increasingly, health information systems are being designed with the goal of unity in mind. How can we get all the relevant information together, and what ethical or social issues might this raise? When it comes to technologies of service delivery, these are also being developed and continuously improved. For example, reliance on remote modes of health service delivery, something that is really critical now in a pandemic. Telehealth is one example of this, which at this time benefits everyone, removing the need to travel. But outside of a pandemic, this practice, the use of telehealth, specifically benefits people living out of metropolitan settings where access to specialists may be impracticable. What other types of technologies can we consider? Well, when it comes to health IT systems, there is this concept of a portal where the patient has autonomy over their information and can invite specialists or doctors or treating practitioners to access this. There is also self-service kiosks, which we see more and more, particularly at my workplace. So I work at Austin Health, and everything about the patient's arrival process is now digitized by way of self-service kiosks. The use of remote monitoring systems is another form of, or a recent advancement in technology, such as home health monitoring systems, which enable a patient to be at home rather than in a hospital, though they can contact health practitioners if they need. And something that we see more and more of is the use of wearable technology or reliance on apps to improve health. When it comes to medical equipment itself, this can range from complex equipment such as diagnostic imaging technology to very simple technology such as bandages or walking sticks. An area of development in terms of technology is the use of robotics, of which there are a few subsequent slides speaking to the utility and advancements of this kind of technology for direct patient care, indirect patient care, and home health care. It's a really interesting field. And finally, another area of advancement is in the area of 3D printing, which can be used to tailor in a whole new way wearable support, so material-based printing efforts, and more recently and perhaps more controversially, synthetic skin, something that has been developed in the context of wound care for burn victims. This concludes our fairly rapid journey through a discussion of technologies as relevant to health and advancements in these. Specifically, we looked at biotechnology, pharmacology, IT systems, and equipment. This concludes the content for HEA 10002. I look forward to seeing you in our class next week, where we will conduct some exam revision. See you then.